At its most literal, the ancient Greek word aporia translates to without passage, or impassable, or a state of being at a loss. In classical philosophy, particularly in the Socratic dialogues, aporia is a moment of profound puzzlement. The Socratics would question someone who claimed to be an expert on the topic, like justice or courage, until their logic collapsed in on itself. The conversation would reach a dead end, an aporia, where the individual realized that their previous certainty was an illusion. In a broader philosophical sense, aporia is an irresolvable internal contradiction or logical paradox. It is the puzzle that does not have a solution because the very premise of the puzzle are at odds with each other. It is an intellectual equivalent of being trapped in a room with no doors and no windows. When applied to an individual's existential journey, aporia transitions from a logical puzzle into a profound lived crisis. The existential conundrum arises when a person actively searches for objective meaning, absolute truth, or a definitively correct way to live, only to hit a wall of aporia. While aporia feels like a failure or a trap, existential philosophy often treats it as a necessary awakening. As long as an individual believes that there is a clear, paved path of truth or meaning, they are essentially asleep, following the scripts handed to them by a society, a religion, or a particular dogma. Hitting the state of aporia strips away those comforting illusions. It forces the individual to confront the raw, uncomfortable reality of their existence. In this view, the impasse is not the end of the journey, but the mandatory starting point for authenticity, because there is no external way out, no passage. The individual is forced to turn inward and forge their own subjective meaning in the face of an unsolvable puzzle. As Zhongfang Mingben details in his book, The Illusory Man, precisely when the moment arrives, you must absolutely not turn to meditation or the Buddha Dharma or go meet with other people to work out a solution. It's like banging your head against a silver mountain. It's like running up against an iron wall. You're left with nothing to chew on but that flavorless, meaningless, indestructible subject of our discussion, with no other thought upon which to crouch. The mind hangs in suspension. It is leaning over a 10,000-foot cliff, like standing on top of a 100-foot pole. There is nothing in front of you to catch hold of, nobody behind you to help. But take hold of the teachings, use them to steady yourself, and just keep going with diligence and determination. In certain subject matters, aporia might be well considered the immovable philosophical object, a point at which the inquiry or inquirer reaches a logical deduction that essentially creates an impassable object, and often occurring when critiquing and exploring inwardly upon our own premises and our mind. Aporia is a deeply uncomfortable experience. It is a deeply shaking obstacle to encounter, especially for one who has an analytical mind and is deriving for certain truths and categories of right and wrong, which seem at once to cease in their gravity at the profoundest levels of reach of our present understanding. However, the immovable object itself presents an opportunity, both for humility as well as for relaxation. It was perhaps in Tolstoy's spiritual autobiography entitled A Confession. In his late 40s, at the height of his literary success, wealth, and family life, Tolstoy hit a profound existential wall, where he falls into deep depression driven by a single inescapable question. What is the meaning of my life that the inevitability of death does not destroy? At which point he turned to the intellect in order to find a way out, exhaustively searching his philosophy and artistic background to the sciences and mathematics, only to find himself in the areas of philosophy and then at once in the religions. When Tolstoy tried to explain the absolute inescapable dead end of his intellect, he recounts an ancient Eastern fable that perfectly encapsulates the existential trap. Tolstoy describes a traveler who is wandering across a plain where he is suddenly chased by a ferocious beast. To save himself, the traveler jumps into a dry well. But as he falls, he looks down to see a terrifying dragon at the bottom of the well, its jaws open, waiting to devour him. The traveler cannot climb out because the beast is above, and he cannot drop down to the dragon below. This is the physical embodiment of aporia. There is absolutely no way out. Desperate, the traveler grabs hold of the wild twig growing off the cracks of the well's wall and clings to it. As he hangs there, his arms grow tired. He notices two mice, one black and one white, crawling out of the stem of the twig, slowly gnawing through it. The twig will eventually snap. His fall is mathematically inevitable. While hanging there, waiting for the twig to break, the traveler notices a few drops of honey on the leaves of the branch. He reaches his tongue out and licks them. Tolstoy then translates this harrowing fable into his own lived reality. Thus I hung upon the burrows of life, knowing that the inevitable dragon of death is waiting ready to tear me, and I can't comprehend why I am thus made a martyr. I tried to suck the honey which formerly consoled me, but the honey no longer gives me pleasure. I only see inescapable dragons and mice, and I cannot tear my gaze from them. For Tolstoy, the terror of Aporia wasn't just that he was going to die. The true horror was that the rationale logic offered no ladder out of the well. Reason only made his eyesight sharper. It only helped him to see the dragon more clearly and calculate exactly how fast the mice were chewing. Because his intellect showed him the absolute certainty of his doom, the honey of life, his wealth, his global fame as an author, and his family completely lost its sweetness. You cannot enjoy a drop of honey when you are staring at the jaws of a dragon. It is a tragic obstacle which, at once first when confronted, can be extremely frustrating, confusing, and almost bizarre. But in time, as one continues to inquire and encounter the encapsulated perimeter of the human psyche in matters of logical paradox, they will begin to find solace in the sense that certain questions are irreconcilable. There are no good answers, only subjective, authentic ways in which we can embrace our lives.